I'm Scott Allen Miller. It is Monday, the 1st of December, 2025, and today the power is supposed to be cut nationwide at 9 p.m., which is what time it is. So we are attempting to do a live stream and seeing just how far we'll be able to go. I am noticing right now that you are getting a stream in the dark, so we're not really sure what's going on here. Why is it dark? That's new. I have no idea what's wrong with the live stream. Are people really getting this are you getting audio? Someone hop on and tell me what's going on. Because it is completely dark. There we go. There's an image now. Just glitches with YouTube. Everything seems to be fine. It had the time wrong and everything else. So here we are. Hopefully we got some people hopping on soon. It doesn't know what's going on, so it can't tell me if anyone is on. But we're going to send this out, let some people know. So the announcement just went out that they are cutting the national grid. We don't know why. There's something going on. This is, Janet is talking about that we had a big break from Mexico a number of years ago, about 5 years ago. I remember when that happened, and that was a really big event. Something like that may be going on. This could be cutting all of Central America. This may be larger than the country since we are the provider to the region. This may be something really big going on. Diego is on. Hey, you can hear me. Awesome. Hopefully you can see me as well. And Diego, if you heard anything about the power cut that's supposed to be coming, I'm going to do my best to get a screenshot of this so that people can see it on the show so you know what we're talking about. Let me see if I can possibly pop this up and do one of these capture things. The screen capture stuff doesn't work great. We're just going to do this. I think it's going to grab it. Nope, didn't do anything. Wow, well, that's just wonderful. Do I do this? Oh, there we go. There you can kind of see it. Comunicado al Centro Regional de Coordinación de Transacciones de Energía del IOR informa que este día es realizada una interrupción eléctrica programa en Nicaragua a las 9 p.m., which is right now, como parte de maniobras técnicas necesarias para garantizar la estabilidad del sistema eléctrico regional. Basically, to provide for the stabilized regional electric, we got to cut the power. We have no idea how long this is going to be for or what's going on. So we just found out about it minutes ago. And yeah, that's a lot of fun. So we have no real idea on that. I do have my phone charged, and that's about it. I did just buy a new lantern, which will be handy to try out for that. Luckily, my phone is charged, so pretty much good there. I got a lot of people. My dogs are going crazy behind the microphone there. So at the moment, our power is still on. We are 6 minutes into the supposed outage. I don't know if they're cutting. Normally, they're pretty close. They cut it within a minute or two, so who knows? Tony says, my bet is 30 hours. That would be pretty surprising, given even the Mexico cut was nothing like that. I've never seen a 24-hour cut in this country ever, even back when it was really bad. Do you know anything about the Playa Tesoro resort that is being built? Being built? I mean, I guess it's being built. I mean, they're still doing stuff, but I mean, it's been there for 25 years. It's I wouldn't quite call it being built. Oh my gosh, my dogs. They're going to knock everything over in this room. I just know they are. Tesoro is here in Leon, so yeah, of course we know them. We know the guys who built Tesoro. Saeed, my good buddy, is the program manager over there. We've done shows over there. Diego says, I hope it doesn't go for more than 2 hours. It's impossible to sleep in Doral without my abanico or air conditioning. What's abanico? I don't know that word. Air conditioning, yeah. And we lose Claro and Tigo after 2 hours. We're lucky. We have Teco, so we've never lost Teco. I mean, Teco has gone down, but we've never had Teco go out from a power outage before, ever. So it's... I've also never had... I've never had Claro go out. I've never had it go so long that they went out. Oh, oh! So... This is one of those things that is really tough for English speakers, is the interchangeable B's and V's. In English, a B, abanico, and a V, avenico, are very different sounds and letters and completely different words. But in Spanish, they are interchangeable. And so I have never seen avenico written with a B, and no matter how much I should know to try replacing it with a V in my head to see if I know the word, I just don't. And so it's very, very difficult to internalize that those things are one word. Yes, avenico, a fan. Is a portable battery bank a necessity? You can come in.
Hello.
What's up? I'm doing a live stream before the power goes out.
Oh, that's what I was asking about. There's no power out yet.
The power has not gone out yet, but it's a nationwide announcement. It's supposed to go off at 9. No one knows anything more.
Well,
But the announcement went out. So, is a portable battery bank necessary for Nicaragua? Yes, I mean it's a necessity anywhere. Pretty much, you shouldn't be running electronics without some battery cleaning things, or else you're going to burn things out and just not be able to ride through blips. We have a lot of blips here, very few what Americans would really consider serious outages. So battery packs handle nearly everything. Of course, if you have a laptop, that will normally carry you through, but what about your Wi-Fi? How are you going to keep that running? So you want a battery on that. Diego says, I'm pretty sure abanico with a B is the correct grammatical form. I actually think, Diego, this is my personal opinion, so don't put any weight in this, but it is a Nicaraguan word, which means it has no spelling. It is a spoken language, not a written language, and it is not a Spanish word, so there is no official spelling of it, is my understanding, just like Sutiava, right? So Sutiava, 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 Sutiava. All those are official spellings of Sutiava.
How many are there?
8, I think.
Really?
Yeah, because there's an optional. So you can spell it Sutiava with a V and Sutiava with a B.
Yes.
But then you can spell it Subthiava with a B and a V. So there's 3 potential positions of the first. Nothing, a B or a V. And then each of those has a B or a V on the other. So is that just 6 options? Maybe there's just 6. But it's a bit much. It's in RAE. What? Send me a link. It's an official word. How have I... That's crazy.
What's the word?
Avenica. Like fan. Avenico. Fan. Yep, there it is. And it's spelled with a B. Interesting. That is the first time I've ever seen a Nicaraguan spell it with a B. Ever. I've almost never seen it spelled, but when I've seen it, it's always been a V.
Well, I'll be here when the power goes on.
All right. So this is our waiting for the power to go hangout. Oh, that's right. You can't put a link in here. Sorry, Diego. There you go. He's correct. we always... So coming from the outside and having lived in Spain and Panama and Texas and being in a lot of places that speak Spanish, Aventador is always what we are taught and use. And it was always presented that Abanico was local. Interesting. Apparently used in Cuba as well. So supposedly, Brian, we are losing power because the national grid is being cut to rebalance something, reprovide to about 6 other countries, and so once in a while we have to deal with that. Edwin says, "Hi, Scott. Monday night, isn't it?" Yes, it is Monday night. Do you guys keep your food in the fridge during an outage? Yeah, of course. Well, you definitely don't want to take it out of the fridge because then it would get warm, right? The secret to an outage is just leave your fridge closed. Waiting for a power outage. I'm so in. This sounds exciting. So, Patricia, we're already late for it, so we don't know if it's happening. It was supposed to be 15 minutes ago nationwide, and we're all just kind of like twiddling our thumbs going, is it happening? Is it real? Normally, if they say the power's got to go out, it goes out. But because it's a national warning, there is a possibility, of course, that some of the country has gone out and some just won't. That they're just preparing so that anyone can. Diego, do you still have power? Diego says, it's really amazing how we supply half of Central America. It really is. Not just half of Central America, but Mexico too. Obviously not all of Mexico, just little bits in the south, but it's amazing. Edwin says, Brian, is Nicaragua with electrical power is unpredictable when we'll go out. Sometimes, Edwin, but sometimes it's really good. Like normally so out here in Leon, if they give us a time, we expect it to be within 2-3 minutes. Like it's right. Yeah, Diego says it might be sectorized. It may just be rolling through the country and we don't know. So far, no one has reported in to me that it's out, but obviously I'm not an official reporting location or anything, so I wouldn't likely know. So Diego still has power on the west side of Managua. I'm going to send the announcement out to the east side of Managua and see what's going on over there. See if I can get some information, and let's see if Luke is on to report from the cold north. Hondurans do have it rough, yeah. That is a... So we'll get some people to check in from around the country. So this is an interesting live stream topic, the amount that... but Diego's right. Our electrical grid is really great, to be honest. Like, we put the U.S. to shame. I've never lived anywhere in the U.S. that comes close to how good it is here. Edwin says, I have power on southeast side of Managua normally, but sometimes goes out for a while in the afternoon very often. Patricia says, is Luke reporting from Matagalpa? Well, he's supposed to be. Oh, he's typing right now, so we'll know in a second. No loss of power in Matagalpa, just a crazy flash flood of the streets for an hour. Now the roads are dry again. They had a major storm hit up there. I forgot that was going on because we didn't get any rain down here today. We were kind of hoping for it. So the 3 big cities have all reported in as still having power. And let me ask the San Juan group. They're the farthest to the south. So we're just having a little party here waiting for the other shoe to drop, I guess. I always find annoying, this is Diego, I always find annoying that is no RAE for the English language. It made it so hard to learn English. We find it really frustrating that Spanish has a single official, but then again, so we have a separate problem. We find it very difficult to accept that some government agency just decided it owns your language, whereas English is owned by its speakers. So it's a very different thing. We have so Spanish doesn't actually have an ultimate authority either. It just has an agency that claims to be an authority. But if you really go to Argentina or Chile and say to an average person, do you think that these people in Spain own your language? They'd be like, no. But in English, we have things like the RAE. That would be, so England has one called the Cambridge Dictionary, and the United States has one called the Webster's. However, so Cambridge is a little bit more of telling you how the language is. Webster's is a how they wanted it to be, and it was intentionally wrong compared to standard use and accepted use long ago, and which is an interesting situation. But English is a living language. RAE is the Royal Academy of... Oh, now I can't think of what it is. Anyway, it's the Spanish government maintains the Spanish government's opinion as to what is official Spanish. And so if you want to speak or check if the rules of Spanish that you're using, whether spelling, grammar, things like that, you can go to the RAE and it's official. Official as in the Spanish government makes it official. And many countries in Latin America and Equatorial Guinea have signed on as accepting the RAE as their linguistic authority. So all their schools, their government and such use RAE official Spanish as a guide to what correct spelling is, or what a word means, for example. Whereas in English, we have nothing of the sort. We have the Oxford, which is the best chance to define as used the English language, but the difference is Spanish is like Webster's dictionary, where they write how they want the language to be used and you're expected to follow it. Whereas the Oxford in English defines how it is used as best that they can. Patricia says, my electricity here in the USA is better than Nicaragua. I never lose electricity. You never lose? Where are you? I've never lived anywhere that didn't have dramatically worse than Nicaragua. Edwin says, of course, during December with Purisima and during 24th and 31st with Christmas and New Year's Eve, we all shot fireworks at the clock till the clock gets midnight. YouTube should add features to share images. They don't, because they don't want things that have to be edited popping up. E equals Espanol. Obviously. Oh my gosh. What? Diego says it's just the RAE has the loudest voice. Yeah, well, and it's so the RAE has one major problem. It is colonial, right? So following it has this, well, we're submitting to a colonial authority as to what our language is, but it's not theirs to own, right? So that makes it for complicated situations. But as you go through the different Spanish-speaking countries, they have a linguistic regulatory body in most cases. And most of them, but not all of them, agree with the RAE. So many of them have their own academies that define what their official language is, For example, in Nicaragua, it's the Academia Nicaragüense de la Lengua, right? But most of them agree to be basically a satellite of the Real Academia Española in Madrid. The notable exception is, I believe, that the one in Puerto Rico does not use it. And New Mexico does not agree to it. Right, Diego says, every country has their own academy, and they all come together in the ASLALE. Let me make sure I'm... Edwin says, I saw Chinese nationals, those who put their stores here via FTA started 2024, were surprised to see fireworks in the sky in December and said, in China we don't do that, shoot fireworks to the sky. Yeah, we still, as Americans, we find it very strange that people put up with having someone dictate their language to them. It's really, I mean, I get why people do it, but from an English perspective, we're like, what? So I see why it's crazy in reverse, going like, wait, there's no government that controls your language? No, it's a language. What does government have to do with it? How do they get to say what I'm speaking? We'll just declare a new language. Nita N85 says, Hola, Scott, my biggest fear when it comes to moving to Nicaragua is if the current government says, okay, we don't want any foreigners here, if they confiscate land and properties, money is at risk. So, obviously that's a fear. However, where are you coming from that it's not a fear where you are now? That's what you actually have to gauge, right? Oh, and Diego says, that's a risk for every government. Everyone can decide at any moment they don't want foreigners. Let's be clear. Diego is being overly specific. Any government at any time can decide they don't want you or you to have property. Examples are, for example, in the US and Canada, if you've ever heard of eminent domain, at any moment they can decide that your property is no longer yours and it's now the government's. They don't do this all the time, but they do it regularly. And nearly everyone knows someone who's had it happen. You all know me, it's happened to me. Not in Canada, but in the United States. It is a normal thing that happens. Now, it happens everywhere, right? Basically, it's needed so you can put in new highways, for example. So you're not very likely to have it happen randomly, because once you do, all hell breaks loose. Countries dissolve. They completely fall apart. So it's not something you normally see happen. You saw it happen in in Zimbabwe in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it completely destroyed the country, right? Utterly destroyed the country. Very, very few countries have ever decided to do something so reckless. No Latin country has ever done something, ever, right? The only places you would ever really worry about that, the only people who generally carry fear of that are North Americans, where it happens on a scale which is still tiny, but so much so that it feels like an imminent risk, that you're always in that risk. Once you leave the US or Canada, people don't really live with that fear. A few people do, mostly because they're getting propaganda or news from the US or Canada. In most of the world, property rights, which are very weak in the US, one of the things about US law is that it has extremely little property rights. And in fact, when they're writing the Constitution, the original wording was life, liberty, and property was removed and replaced with pursuit of happiness. That phrasing was not from the Constitution. It's from an earlier document in Scotland. And so the United States, when being founded, specifically decided, and for potentially good reasons, but specifically decided that the concept of property could not be at the same level as other things, including the pursuit of happiness. And so because of that, there has been a cascade in U.S. law where property is very loosely protected compared to the entire rest of the world. You should, under normal circumstances, be looking at Nicaragua and saying, okay, my biggest fear in being alive is that any current government, or more importantly, any future government, who decides they don't want me, foreign or not, to be there or own things, I'm at risk. This is a risk all humans live with because we have governments. So you can't avoid that risk. What you can do is minimize that risk. If you wanted to maximize that risk, you would do things like be an illegal immigrant somewhere, you would steal property, you would go to a failed state, right? Places with no functional government, that those places have nothing to lose, right? And so confiscating property can happen. Or that's one tier. And then the next tier of danger is North America, US and Canada, where property laws are very, very weak compared to the rest of the world, and you're at risk. If you want to protect yourself, you would get away from those regions and move into areas like Latin America and much of Europe and North Africa and much of Asia, where property laws are quite strong. If you wanted to go to an extreme level of protection against it, you would come to places like Nicaragua, where they are outrageously passionate about it. And I know of very few countries on earth where they take it so seriously and actually go after people who have confiscated land and actually do something about it, as opposed to most countries are like, well, once it's happened, what can we do? Nicaragua does something about it. They take it more seriously than anywhere I know. So if that is actually a concern of yours, it should be driving you to Nicaragua, not driving you away from Nicaragua. The idea that someone can do something in the future can be applied anywhere. That's a scare tactic. That never really matters. Do you have a reason to think Nicaragua would do that in the future? None. None at all. Makes no sense. Completely illogical. Now, you can say, but my fear is that the government becomes completely illogical. Absolutely. Do you have a reason to think they would become completely illogical? Nope, it's just a general fear. Okay, perfect. Every country you have that general fear of. Right? Any country that's doing well today might do poorly tomorrow. Okay. So that's a risk. But every place has these risks that something unpredictable could happen. Absolutely. The best thing you can do is get to where things have, one, a good situation today, Nicaragua being at the best you're going to reasonably find, right? I'm sure someone's better, but this is one, and one of the problems that Nicaragua has is that the U.S. stole tons of land. They had entire offices for land appropriation here in the past during the 20th century, and so there's this history of things needing to be fixed, and there are lots of people who are bitter that they got caught trying to steal land, and so you get a lot of these stories being passed around. But very importantly, like, this is not something you find happening here. Everybody wants to tell you it's going to happen, but nobody can produce an example of it. Trust me, I ask and I ask and I ask and I ask. And everyone starts off with, oh yeah, it happened to me, it happened to someone I know. And when you start questioning them, well, I didn't actually buy the place. Oh, well, I actually met someone else. Actually, it was a story I heard from someone. Actually, it wasn't someone in Nicaragua. It's always, the story changes as you start trying to get details. Okay, can you show me the property? Why did your lawyer let this happen? Well, okay, I didn't actually pursue finding out. Actually, I never bought it. Right, every time. Right, at least 3 times this week, I've had someone give me the story of someone stole this land, and when I asked them about it, they're like, actually, I never knew who owned it, and I don't know who owns it now. So what part of it was stolen? Oh, all of it. By whom? I don't know. From whom? I don't know. How do you know it was stolen? Well, it was. That's a lie. Right? That's just what that is. And so understanding that the way that people present it is to create FUD. They're trying to scare you. But if you step back and think about it logically, the only place that you have a dramatic level of fear right now over something like that is the U.S. Canada is still worse than most countries. There's nothing compared to the U.S. where deportation even of citizens is now a very real thing, and seizure of land and property absolutely expected. We have reason to be fearful that that is going to be a major thing. Doesn't mean it's going to be, but we have really good, solid reason to be terrified that property and businesses and houses and whatever will be seized in the U.S. The groundwork for that is being laid, and activity on it is underway, and the kicking out even its own citizens is underway. There is absolutely no history of any of these things happening in Nicaragua, no cultural affinity for them happening, no current events that would put this on the horizon for consideration, and nothing that would logically lead to it. So Nicaragua remains the farthest thing from the place you would have this concern that you can find. Every place has this concern to some degree. You can't get away from it. Just like I'm really fearful that it's going to start raining a lot, even though it didn't in the past. Climate change. Any place can suddenly become rainy. Some places are very unlikely to change in that way. Mali, for example, would be pretty surprised if it suddenly got 10 times as much rain as it has had in the past. They wouldn't know what to do, right? But it's also very unlikely for that to happen. But if you were to say Guatemala is suddenly going to get 20 more inches this year than it got last year, we go, yeah, that's a reasonable thing of climate change. Or lose 20 inches, right? So there's things that are within the scope of reason, and there are things that are, well, we're talking about, like, what if a meteor suddenly took out the Earth, right? We're talking about those kinds of things. Like, there's just no connection to it. Diego says it's really useful. It's like formal for contracts and laws. Not quite sure what he's... Oh. He's talking about the Spanish language thing. It is true. The U.S. and all the English-speaking countries do have a problem that we can, and this happened, right, that people try to redefine the language as used in court to make excuses for things. So, oh, this contract's not valid because I don't read the words that way. Patricia says you can rent instead of buying land. If the government kicks you out, you leave and stop paying rent. True. Thanks for your response. Diego says, so that we all understand each other and what we mean on formal contracts or law in day-to-day, everyone speaks how they like, right? That's actually problematic, that you have a separate language for law than you do. So basically you have a language of the elites and a language of the people, and the language that the country speaks isn't the one recognized by the government. That's what we went through in England a long time ago during the Norman Conquest. The elites spoke French, and everyone else spoke English, and eventually they merged together over hundreds of years. But even now, after hundreds of years, you can use, and AI is perfect for this, analyze someone's speech patterns, and if they speak primarily using French-rooted words, they are much, much more likely to be lying. It has become the linguistic marker of deceit, the language of the government. Luke says, still have power in Matagalpa. We still got power here in Leon. Nobody has reported power out anywhere. So... Well, now you guys aren't very chatty. How many people we got on? 24! Oh my gosh! We got a lot of people on. It's not very talkative, but it is a busy night. So I'm going to talk about, just because we're talking about property stuff, I met a guy in Managua this past week, ran into, and he lives in San Juan del Sur, of course. And he had this story of all their land being stolen and all this stuff going on. He says, it happens all the time. I said, if this happens all the time, where are you getting this from? He's like, well, people have told me. I'm like, has anyone provided you anything beyond just telling you this? No. I said, okay, so you're being lied to. You're being played, right? They're trying to get you to panic so they can get you to react in a certain way. He says, well, all my neighbor's land was stolen. I said, okay, how do you know it was stolen? He said, well, I bought it. I'm like, okay, you own this land? And someone took it from you? Yes. Okay, so you have a deed for this land? No. Okay, how do you know you bought this land? Did you get a survey? Is there anything? No. Okay, but you went somewhere and you paid for this land? No. Okay, so did you pay for the house you have? Yes. To whom? right? And it just kept going in a circle. He kept doubling down that people, and this is a Canadian, kept doubling down that people were stealing his neighbor's land. And I think that there are squatters going on. Because he says, if this is true, assuming the things that he says are true, which it's impossible that all the things he's saying are true. He's saying conflicting things. He can't be telling the actual story. But assuming the parts that don't have to conflict with something are true, then Diego, we have no official spelling of just about anything. And pronunciation you're expected to know. Like, we're just expected to know an insane number of words. That is, welcome to the hell that is English. So the one thing that seemed to be a fact was that he spoke to the people who were squatting and asked them if they had bought the land, and they said no. And I believe this part is accurate because it's a very difficult thing to misconstrue. Now, I don't think he knows what squatters are, which is surprising coming from North America. Squatters are a thing we fear. What it sounds like, and real quickly, Matalero says, "Hi Scott, greetings from Chile in Southeast America." That is Southeast America. That is funny that Chile is Southeast. Welcome. That's awesome. We never get anyone from that far south. What city are you in? We got to know. Alberta boy, are you familiar with the Veracruz barrio? You're looking at it. Is it decent? Yes, it's fantastic. Found a nice rental there. Yes, I am in Veracruz. Veracruz is a barrio inside of Sutiava. It is, I think you're saying something wrong, Alberta boy. It is the Reparto Veracruz, not the barrio Veracruz. Repartos and barrios are similar things, but a barrio means it touches downtown, and reparto means it touches the barrios. The only reason that I'm saying this is that many barrios and repartos do overlap. You will get, for example, there's a reparto Sutiava and a barrio Sutiava. So you do need to be a little bit aware of that terminology. I do not know where a barrio Veracruz is, but in West Leon is a very nice area that is Reparto Veracruz, and that is where I live, inside of Sutiava. It is not large enough to show up on maps generally, so we call ourselves Barrio Sutiava because we are in the municipality of Sutiava, and all of the maps are a little bit wrong. So that's why we refer to it that way. But my barrio is the Reparto Veracruz. I am quite confident that you are looking at the Reparto, and yes, very decent, very safe, really nice area. There is both residencia in it and the open part of the Reparto, it's one of my favorite parts of the city. It's upscale but authentic. You're not getting in with expats, Alberta boy, can you send us the... No, you can't. Let me get back to... maps was this thing you call maps. For Diego, there are a surprisingly number of rules as to how to pronounce words that we don't speak or write. But remember that English includes all of French and all of Latin as part of the language. We're inclusive of them. And so we're extensive as a language. So we have all of the German grammatical rules and all of the Latin grammatical rules. With all of the Latin words, when writing in Latin, you have to write in italic. That's why we use that. In French, we don't use italic, but yes, Reparto Veracruz is the western extent of the city. It is the last region, is the last Reparto that can be considered the city. If you go past Reparto Veracruz, you're into the wilds, right? It drops off. Yeah, the outage never came. I think we're down pretty good. So the story was that so it seems like squatters are on this land. What it seems like is somebody put in a development, and we warn people, never get into a development. You got to really know what you're doing to get into a development, because there's so much complexity. There's so many things to go wrong. Not that the concept of developments is bad, but oh my gosh, is there a lot to go bad. If you are going to get into a development, whatever you do not do it in San Juan del Sur. If you are going to do it in San Juan del Sur, whatever you do, don't use a real estate agent. And if you are going to do these things, whatever you do, don't let that real estate agent get you a local lawyer. Of course, every one of these things is what they did. So what appears to have happened, and so this is one of those sources of seized lands, right? This is a person who goes around telling, like he grabbed me at a coffee shop and was telling me how his land was seized. But he could not describe how his land was seized. Couldn't come up with anything that he could describe as anyone seizing anything. He described squatters on unclaimed land, right? He said he's in a development. I said, who owns the other spaces? I don't know. Half the time he said, I don't know. Half the time he said he did, right? So clearly, no clue. You don't mess up what land you own, right? As a investor in land, I would never be confused about where my line is. I could be off by a few inches here or there, but you don't not know which housing lots are yours. Maybe if you're a billionaire and you own tens of thousands of lots, I guess. But for any normal person, you know what you've bought, right? You really know. So he has this confusion. The only thing that makes sense is that a developer put in a development and fled. Probably they didn't ever buy the land. This is a common thing. They were probably hoping that they could get away with squatting. Something went wrong. Maybe they didn't pay their taxes. Who knows? And they took off, probably long ago. This person was sold a spot in this development. Given his inability to articulate owning land, I have a very strong suspicion that he does not own his own lot or house. I am pretty sure, now this I could be wrong on for sure, but I feel quite confident he has no deed and no survey with no lot lines. I don't think he knows where his land is, if he has any. I think he built a house on just land that someone described to him, and that person took off. From the description, it sounds like his is the only house in the development. So you can imagine how this happens. I'm a foreigner. I show up and I find a bit of land that it seems that no one seems to have claimed, right? None of the owners seem to be around. If I put up a tent on this land, no one says anything. If I start putting up a rancho, no one says anything. If I build a wall, no one says anything. Right? You test the waters a little bit and you go, well, I think the owners aren't paying attention. And so you build a wall around it and you put up a sign selling lots. Someone calls you and you make a deal, right? Probably, with a real estate agent and a lawyer. They say, look, I'm going to cut this 3 ways. You got to drive people to this property. You've got to, sign some paperwork that make it look kind of official. And of course, there's lots of ways to do this. I don't know that any of this happened, but you can see how it could happen. Just get this person to sign some papers in Spanish. They don't speak Spanish. We convince them to come in, and they're going to pay us and this is San Juan del Sur. So what would be up here in Leon, maybe $3,000 for a lot, we're going to get $50,000 or $100,000, right? Because we're talking about someone who's not even getting a deed, we assume. And we know they don't know if they have a deed. We know they don't know where the lines are. We know they don't know what the development is. They don't have any information as to the structure of what they bought, supposedly.
Are you on LiveStream?
Yes.
Oh.
Because the power was supposed to go out, and my wife is here, and the power was supposed to go out, so we did live stream till the power goes out, but the power never went out.
Oh.
We got a lot of people on. We're just waiting for the power to cut. But no one's lost power. San Juan del Sur is reporting power. Matagalpa's reporting power. Managua's reporting power. Everyone's on watching the live stream. So it could randomly go down. So we did not get to put the tree together because I had to jump on the live stream before the power went out.
I'm not amused.
We found out right as you left the house.
Yeah.
Because I sent the
saw
thing.
messages.
So we had to get on. All right, I'm mid-story. So you can see how easily it would be to get some people who are a little bit less than scrupulous. And of course, this was some time ago, back when there was no regulation whatsoever. There was no such thing as a real estate agent. So today, doing this would be quite a bit more sketchy. But back then, this was very much just how things are done. And in San Juan del Sur, this is how things are done, right? So you get a couple people together, and you get someone to spend maybe $50,000 or $100,000 on something you don't own, and is only worth maybe $1,000 tops anyway. But you act like it's going to be this big development. You act like there's going to be all these people in the future. You act like all this stuff is going to happen. And then you simply take off with the money. And it could be forever until they find out that they don't own it. And you may get lucky. They might be there for 10 years, have done improvements, and become the squatter who actually owns the property. But of course, they're going to be annoyed to find out that they spent $50,000 on a little tiny building lot, and other people moved into lots next to them, spent nothing, squatted just the same as them, and have every bit as much rights to that property as they do. Or in fact, quite a lot more rights, because they're Canadian, and Canadians do not get squatters' rights in Nicaragua, right? Foreigners don't get to squat. Nicaraguans get to squat. So the Nicaraguans who are squatting next to them are able to eventually actually own those lots free and clear. But at any time, they could call the city and be like, this guy is trying to squat, and he's not Nicaraguan, and he doesn't live here full time, so they could move into his house, in theory, and live there when he's not there, break in, and when he shows up, they could call the police and be like, this guy doesn't have a deed. This guy didn't buy this property. He's been illegally trying to squat and steal this from Nicaraguans. So the risk he's under is extreme. Now, maybe he truly does have a deed. Maybe he really does own his own land. But he gave me no confidence that that is true, and every confidence that he's actually trying to squat. He doesn't think he's trying to squat. He believes that he paid a lot of money to own something in a development. But the development doesn't sound like it's real, which is often the case, and it sounds like he doesn't own it. So this is, developers will do this, and when you are buying a lot inside of something owned by someone else, you're already in a difficult, confusing situation, and you're carrying other people's risk, right? Well, what if the development ends up running afoul of the law, and it turns out that the development wasn't approved? Well, you may be in a situation where you're in an illegal house, right? You're putting a lot of trust in another person. You got to be really confident when you're going into a development. Now, you go into Managua, you go into one of these big monitored developments with thousands of houses, and the police are in there all the time. You have nothing to worry about. But what a lot of foreigners have a tendency to do is go into some place in the middle of nowhere with a thing that isn't even really a development, and you buy the first lot and you put up a house and go, this whole development is mine, and no one has ever monitored it, no one's ever checked the paperwork, no one else ever shows up, and big problems arise. So this is an example of someone who repeats that he keeps saying all these stories of things have been stolen, but I pressured him. I kept asking, how do you know who owned that property? Well, I don't know. Then how can you claim it was taken from them? Well, it was. No, that's a lie. The first fact negates the possibility of you saying the second, right? And so the willingness of people to lie about this is just unbelievable. The number of North Americans especially, but tons of Nicaraguans too, who will just say that it's happened, but you ask them where, when, who, they got nothing every time. Every time. And you can bet the farm on it. There is zero chance someone who makes that claim to you is going to be able to back it up with anything at all. Right? 5 years. I have asked every person for an example, and it never comes. It's always something else. Either it never happened at all, completely fabricated, and he said, oh, there's all these swaths of land being taken all over the place. Really? You got an example of one? Well, no. But you know it's happening. Oh, I know it's happening. Based on what? Well, I just know. Right? Yeah, that is, and why are you here, right? If you're going to make up these stories, and like, I just don't understand what drives people to do that, but very passionate about it. CM says very close to buy. I think buying a lot in Playa Chiquilita. Hope all goes well. Yes, good luck. Maps, what's this thing? I never knew the difference between a barrio and a reparto. Far west side of the city. There. Diego says, well, the outage never came. So far. Metalero says, is down coast of East, Massachusetts, Florida. Yeah, right, yes. It's still east of all those places. It's true. There we go. Albertus boy says Los Altos de Veracruz. Yes, that is the residencia. So that is the east westernmost part of the Reparto of Veracruz. That's a residencia within the Reparto. You actually see it on my show quite often. We just don't always point it out. I don't actually live in Los Altos, but very close. Diane Kanki 6654. What do you think about reverse racism? I experienced that here in the States often. Reverse racism. I mean, we get reverse racism here a tiny itty bitty bit. That's where you get treated extra well, rather than other people being treated badly. I'm surprised that you experienced that in the States that much. I mean, it happens for sure. Like, I'm not like, whoa, that happens, but a lot less than. Well, I guess in the States it happens a lot more. Here we really don't have it, right? In the U.S., there are a lot of mechanisms where reverse racism is institutionalized. It's a tough one, right? It comes from the concept of you want to combat existing racism. Given that there is racism, which we all know exists, well, there needs to be an offset to it, right? It's kind of like noise-canceling headsets. Well, you know there's going to be noise, so you want to create some reverse noise to kind of cancel it out. And the thought is that reverse racism will maybe cancel things out, but in reality, it doesn't. I think the reality is that most of the time, it ends up enforcing or justifying the original racism, right? The people who are originally racist, oh, I don't like this group of people because then they find out that group of people has institutionalized advantages over them. They go, and see, proof, absolute proof. And now I don't have to feel bad about this racism that I was involved in, right? And so I think it's a bad idea. I think the only thing that really works, one is education and really, really strictly going after racism and making that institutionally illegal with incredibly harsh penalties, but also creating equality, right? Institutionally identifying groups is fundamentally a problem. Once you are saying, well, this group of people has an identity, that creates the ability to attach rights to that identity. And I think that in most cases, race, for example, the only thing that should be identified by law is the illegality of the use of race in certain things, right? You should not be allowed to use race when hiring, for example. I'm looking to hire an employee. I want to know their race. No, you should not be allowed to know their race, right? The issue with that, however, and this is where things get really complicated, is that if you take away the ability of the law to identify race, you then open opportunity for statistical racism. Let me give you an example. In Texas, they have figured out how to keep minorities, by and large, out of the upper education system, out of the good universities. How do they do that, given that everyone is guaranteed an equal education under the law in the public school system, and very few people are using private schools in Texas? Absolutely. So given that they wanted to keep minorities out of the university system, they wanted to make sure that the white majority, which is barely a majority, has an advantage. They had to come up with some creative systems, and they all sound wonderful. What Texas has done is reduce the quality of their main education to being utterly worthless. They teach nothing. They actually completely give you a useless education that's often incorrect. So you're actually at a disadvantage over having done nothing at all, right? You actually move backwards. It's horrific in many cases. You then add extracurricular activities that people have to pay for, but they're not education. They're extracurricular activities. The school just happens to put them on and provide all this, paperwork about them and so forth. Then you have the universities not look at your educational work, but look at your extracurricular work. If at any point you ask, are the poor students that are immigrants, first-generation immigrants, are they barred from getting an education? No educational opportunity is kept from them at the K-12 level. But that's not what's used to get you into a job or into university. That's just a babysitting service where you are keeping those people busy so they don't have time to go advance their careers. They have no time to learn things on their own. They're busy with this busy work that bogs them down. But those with money are able to pay, because it's pay to play, for extracurricular activities. And if you don't pay to play starting from early elementary, you are barred from pay to play later. So you have to pay in kindergarten to get access in first grade. You have to pay in first grade to get access to second grade and so forth, so that by the time it counts in high school, you've been paying, so you're able to be in that system. This is a very expensive process. Only deep pockets are able to do anything with it. Panama has a similar system. Texas and Panama modeled in the same way. And so the university then simply does this really great thing and says, we're not worried about grades. We want to see that you participated in a lot of things. But the things that they want to see you participating in are these pay to play. You're buying your way into university starting in kindergarten, pretty young. That's all there is to it. You're simply buying your children's entrance to college. Yeah, they have to do a little bit of work along the way. They can't be complete and utter slackers. But it's meant for the wealthy. There's two things. You have to have enough money for the entire time that you have children. You can't just have children be poor, work your way up, and have money by the time that your kids are about to go to college, and then be able to pay for them. No. You have to have been wealthy enough the entire time. And two, you have to be knowledgeable of the system. You have to know that this is what you have to do. Texans all know that you have to do this, but no one ever stops and says, oh wait, that completely bars all the poor minorities who just immigrated from being able to participate in the system. No one stops and thinks about that. No one's stopping and intentionally blocking them, but the people who designed the system did so with an unbelievable amount of forethought, an unbelievable amount of design to make sure that they had decades of entrenchment to make sure that you need generations to be able to overcome this under most circumstances. But there's no specific individual person who can say they were discriminated against. You're discriminating using statistics, not using individual people. That's how you get power, is once you're statistically harming a group, then you never need to identify that group. And that's where in Texas, at no point are they using race as an identifier. They're using poverty as a statistical identifier of immigrants and poverty over a period of time to make it very strong. And so that type of racism is very deeply entrenched in certain systems. And in Texas, where you pay for extracurriculars, it's deep, whereas in like New York, extracurriculars are paid for by the school. It's part of your school system. It's equal, right? Once anything's unequal, it remains unequal. And so because we have deep entrenched racism, few things are more core to the American experience than racism. America was built on racism and religious classism, and the tie between government and religion. So you will never find a an ecosystem in the United States that isn't deeply entrenched in racism. You will never find one where religion is separated from the government. Those things will never occur in America, right? Nothing is farther from possible. So because of those things, you can then see why reverse racism has a place, and how do you possibly combat racism that is so deeply entrenched unless there's some mechanism to fight against it. What do you think about Playa Jiquilito, Popoyo, Jiquilite or Popoyo? Personally, I'm not a big fan of the area. Way too many tourists. It's not an area. So anything in Rivas, I have zero interest in. I think some of it's beautiful. There's a lot of really great stuff. I like to visit from time to time. This is the Costa Esmeralda. But from would I live there? No, I would never consider anywhere on that coast. And we did 5 years ago. We went to the entire coast and never found one spot we would even remotely consider, because it is an expat zone. And for a lot of people, that's super cool. But not something that we have the slightest interest in. I think Popoyo, really gorgeous. Lots of open space, but it's way too much like San Juan del Sur culture. So I would never myself buy to live there. To invest, maybe, right? But like anywhere, investment here is tricky. Diego says, is it true that you know Spanish and French? Spanish and English, French comes easy? I'm trying to learn a third language. Well, if you know all of English, then you automatically know French, but none of us really know that much. So it's... I mean, if you know Spanish, French comes decently easy. I don't know that English makes it that much easier. I mean, if you know both, obviously another language is just naturally easier. French is especially for Nicaraguans, I think French is pretty easy because it has some linguistic characteristics with Nicaraguan Spanish that don't exist in Castilian. For example, the vos form that we use here comes or is encouraged by French. The dropping of the end of words here actually comes from French, and so forth. So you're a little bit closer. CM says, I'm buying land there. Okay, now we can speak about something real. Okay. Biloco says, heading to Nicaragua tomorrow. My mom is worried that I'm renting a car and driving to Chinandega. Why Chinandega, of all places? I mean, there's not too much to worry about renting a car. I wouldn't do that myself mostly, but is what... Diego says, how can you pay money for land and not demand for a deed? You would not believe the things that expats do when they move to a new country. People just lose their minds. They would never do this in their home country, right? It's not that they don't know that they got to do like this due diligence. It's just that something about moving to a new country, people really just go insane. And so often react so illogically, and they assume that the patterns of behavior that they did in their old country continue, but that the logic doesn't. And it's the opposite. Things that are logical remain logical, and the things that you do mechanically change. But everybody gets it backwards. It's like you just break enough of your accepted patterns that you end up losing the thread of reality. And it gets really surprising, but it's very common. You see it just over and over and over. And it's patterns, right? People who want to start a business long before they have any idea how it would be viable, right? Would you do that in your home country? Heck no. But would you do it in a new country? Suddenly you think that being at a massive disadvantage makes it easy. What? People think that low-income countries are going to somehow provide them a higher income than they could get in their home country. What? People think that they should buy a house, sight unseen, or land, sight unseen, that they should buy before they've spent time somewhere. You would never do that in your home country. But doing it in an entirely new country, people just jump right on it. It's wild. So even things like not needing a deed, not needing to check things, not ensuring you have a good lawyer, all kinds of things. It's just wild. Diego says, I'm pretty sure you need to go to register your land and they'll register de la propiedad. Yeah, absolutely you do. Right? We do that every time. Teakanki says, discriminated against, I meant. Have I been discriminated against here? or I guess there's a couple questions. Diego says, have you ever really experienced racism here? I've always been proud how this country is very diverse and no one gives an F. It's absolutely true. This is the lowest level of racial discrimination I've ever experienced is Nicaragua. As a very clear Chile, I do stand out enough that the one thing I do notice, and this is minor, right, is that a lot of people, not a lot, a noticeable number of people, when they see me, immediately turn into beggars. And they don't do it with other people. A bunch of people will walk down a sidewalk. A guy will just be standing there. I walk by. Boom. Suddenly he's a beggar. He's not actually a beggar. He's just begging from me. Right? That's very noticeable. I've seen a guy just walking down the street, middle of a barrio. There's no one around. He's just going from his house over to a pulperia. He took a moment out of his day to come over to me and act like he was a beggar. I said, no. I walked on. He went to the pulperia and went about his business. He had a normal job. Nothing made him a beggar. It's just he saw me, so he became a beggar. I sit in restaurants. People will scream, hey, Chele, from the street, trying to beg from the street because they know they can annoy me. It's very rare that these things happen. Let me be clear. I've been here for 5 years. It does not happen often. But it does happen enough that there's a noticeable pattern of, and I think it's gotten better. I don't think it's getting worse. That some people just, well, there's someone who's not Nicaraguan. I know with great confidence they're not Nicaraguan, so I'm just going to be a beggar in this situation. When I wasn't with the person who walked down the street in front of them or behind them. If they're begging from everyone, that's fine. Then it's equal opportunity begging. But when I'm the only person that they beg from, then it's racism. And that is a little bit noticeable. But it's a very small number of people. It is a very non-consequential thing, and it does not dramatically impact my life in some way, right? And I understand why people do it. They feel a different, right? If they were begging from their neighbors would be like, you make more money than me, or you make the same money as me. Why are you begging from me? Go work more, or whatever, or learn to budget. I do. Why can't you? But coming to me, they know that, one, I have no idea what their situation is, and it's quite safe that I probably earn more than them. So it's a more like, I get why it may come up, but using the fact that I am very white as a reason to beg from me is a noticeable bit of racism, but really the only one that I've witnessed. Noel says, never thought about that. Taikanki says, not all, of course, but many of them do discriminate Hispanics, and of course it goes both ways, but one is not like that it really hurts. Alberta Boy says, speaking of education, I'm shipping down about 300 hardcover fiction and textbooks. Proper place to donate. I would not do that. If you're shipping them down because you want to read them and when you're done you want to donate them, sure. I don't have the first clue where you would donate them, and people really don't use books here. They exist, obviously, and people read, obviously, but paper books don't hold up well in this climate, so it's not a popular thing for people to invest in. I'm sure you can find places to donate them, but we really don't have libraries. We don't really have places where that would make much sense, and the cost of shipping them down is extensive. Keep in mind that digital books are free here, right? So I feel like you'd be spending a lot of money and a lot of effort for something that easily would go unused. Probably better to donate them in the U.S., most likely. Alberta Boy says, Spanish works well with Italian. It's, in reality, in many cases, Spanish and Italian are interchangeable. They're actually mutually understandable. And they are a bit different, but Spanish is a direct derivative of Italian. Well, it's a direct derivative of Provençal, which is a derivative of Italian. You definitely see the transition happen, but in many cases they're mutually intelligible. Very difficult. You wouldn't be able to form words in the other language, but you can really you can hear it, be like, oh, none of those words are what I would use, but I get it, right? And as someone who used to speak Italian and now speaks Spanish, it is very difficult, but you do get the overlap. Alberta's boy says self-reference criterion kills business decision. It's very true. Good advice on books. Lots of places here. Diego says, I've always find funny how I can 100% can understand Brazilian Portuguese and Italian. I love Romance languages. Brazilian Portuguese, not too bad. Although it does drift a lot compared to Spanish. Like there's no doubt. I can get a bit of Brazilian Spanish. Brazilian Portuguese. Oh my gosh. But Portuguese, oh my gosh. It's no way to understand it. The cadence structure that they have is crazy. All right. Well, it looks like we can safely say the power didn't go off. It's been an hour and a quarter, and the power is still on. This is pretty crazy. So, yeah, I think we're in good shape. I think we had a good discussion tonight. Thanks, everybody, for getting on. I wanted to get this done before the power went out, but I think we're safe. We are going to be doing our real live stream on Thursday, our big one. So make sure you are ready for that. Make sure you give a thumbs up while you're here. I always forget to mention that during these live streams. I actually need to check all the messages going on. All right, guys, we're going to call it a night. Thanks so much for joining me. If you'd like to help support the channel, check out that join button down there. Send in videos of yourself. Someone did send in a video of themselves today. I look forward to getting a video out with them shortly, maybe even in a day or two. Jan says it could still happen later, but so far so good. Yeah, the power could still go out, but we're looking good so far. Okay, buenos dias. Bueno, adios. See you maybe next week. It's Srop in Mexico City. I know a couple people are arriving. When are people arriving? Oh, I missed. Giants Management said Monday Night Live. Nice. Yes, but we're here on the tail end. But Thursday we'll be doing the long one. We've been doing a lot of these little extra lives when I have a good topic to jump into. I think this works really well. I'm getting more overall views from doing this, and we're getting longer time, and it takes me less effort to do than editing the dailies. So, I mean, obviously we're still going out and doing stuff. I've got the apartment tour from Managua we're going to do. We've got some event, the Ipico that I'm going to show. So we've got stuff to show, but when instead of me just standing in the yard, this often works really well, and you guys get to get engaged, and there's a lot more chance for people to talk, and it actually takes me less time. So it's overall working really well. So I'm happy with this. So you'll see more of them. But other than Thursdays, we're going to keep it unpredictable. And with that, remember to like, subscribe. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAllenMiller. Actually, it's Brazilian Portuguese that's a lot closer to Spanish. Portugal Portuguese has that Russian sound, and most Spanish speakers cannot speak it. I can't hear it at all. Pit stop in Mexico City. Very cool. But it says good night. But Brazilian Portuguese is blending in Bolivia, right? Like you really can it's very close to Spanish because that's its influence. But in Portugal, my gosh, it's hard to understand. And I have offices in Bolivia and Portugal. So even my Portuguese office doesn't speak Portuguese, as funny as that is. And they're all hired from Portugal. They're like, yeah, no. It's so impossible. They'll speak Spanish, English, Urdu, I think. So anyway, all right, thanks, guys.